Hello everyone. Today we will talk about using Wildcard chip for Fantasy Premier League. So if you have been following the last episodes, we were talking about adding bench decisions to our optimization model for FPL. And Wildcard usage is just around the corner because of the game week 8 coming, the international break. I know lots of people will be using their Wildcard soon. So in this episode, we will talk about how to add wildcard decisions and constraints, how to update our model so we can take care of adding these new details to our model easily. So the basic principle, as you can remember from the preseason, is to assume that you don't own any player. So that's an easy, that's the simplified version of wildcard optimization. But actually, what we will do is adding wildcard decision as a variable and adding the related constraints to our optimization model. This way, you can try to use wildcard in a game week that's not the next game week. So suppose you are making a decision for game week 6 or 7, and you are planning to think using your wildcard on game week 8. So there's a difference between starting with an empty squad and then try to optimize it because of the pricing. So if you have bought players earlier for a cheaper price, and if their price is higher now, you can only keep 50% of the profit rounded down. And if you have purchased a player, if that player is now cheaper, then when you sell, you are losing all that difference between the buy price and then the sell price. So because of that reason, so moves like selling a player and then buying them later, like 1 week game later, is not the same. So we will talk about how to get the pricing, like what was the buy price, what's the selling price if you sell a player now. So instead of like going back in time and then trying to see, when you purchased a player, what was the buy price and what's the current sell price, there's an easier way to model this. So you can actually log in using a requests package and then keep that information. And there are actually a few pages on FPL API that you can only access after you log in into the system. So I will show you what those pages look like, and then we will talk about how to reorganize our multi-period file so that we can add these changes easily. So this episode will be more about an overview of the wildcard optimization and also some related changes to our model. As you might remember from the last episodes, we have too many parameters to our function. So we will try to simplify that a little bit. And instead of giving team ID and game week every time, we will try to read those values from API as well. So we will save our credentials in a file, try to log in into FPL so that we can get the actual sell prices for all of our players. And then this way we will be able to get all the data we need easily instead of keep adding new parameters to our function. For this purpose, I will first of all show you what are the pages we are trying to fetch using request package, and then we will talk about what kind of changes we need in our functions. Okay, so if you enter FPL website, this is what you see, right? So you see the sign-in form. So what we are trying to do now is when we are trying to figure out what happens when I click login here, and then we will try to get that request and then add it into Python so that we can actually log in. So here, before we log in though, I will show you this page. This URL is will show you only the data you have access to after you log in. So whenever I try to open this right now, as you see, it says player null and watched is just an empty list. Similarly, so there is this page also Let me replace this with team ID so that you can replace with your own IDs. So this is another page that needs authentication. As you see, authentication credentials were not provided. So, and as you know, we also have the regular FPL API entry point. So this is the static data, which includes all the events, all the players, player types, all those kind of information. So we will be using these three pages. This page, we will mainly use it for figuring out what's the next game week, so you don't need to type it every time. And then we will come back here, and then we will try to log in and then see what's happening here. Let's see. Okay, it's here. So see, there is this login request here, and this might be a little bit too small again. Sorry for this, but so the URL is https and then users.premierleague.com /account/login. So this is the login that we will use, and then I won't show you the details here, but we will add details to our Python code. So essentially, we will try to request this page with our credentials. So now let me go back. Oh, actually, before I go back, since I already logged in, so this is just a demo team I created for the video. If I come here, if I refresh the page, as you see, it just shows my information. Oops. And also here, I need to use my own team ID, and then see it shows an array called picks, and also chips and transfers. So these actually values are only accessible by you. So you know that sometimes FPL websites ask you to log in using your FPL credentials. So this is the data they are trying to reach. So how many free transfers you still have, like your limit minus how many transfers you have been made, and also which players you have. So this is again important for wildcard optimization, because during wildcard you will be probably selling and buying lots of players. So you need to know like what to sell those players for and what's the current buy price for those players. Similarly, so we won't use it today, but you can also see what kind of chips are available to you. So for example, now it only shows 4 chips as usual. It shows wildcard and says available. So wildcard 1 is available for this player. So we can actually use this information. We will use it in a way that we can include other chips, but we won't be adding it to directly. I will assume that you already have a wildcard available. And then transfers, again, remember from the previous episodes, we were taking free transfers as a function parameter. We don't need to do it anymore, so we can just read limit and how many transfers you have been made. So this is again important because previously you can remember that we were only able to get the last game week picks of our team and then trying to optimize over that. So if you have been made a transfer meanwhile, then there is no way for another person to know that information without you log into the system. Let me go back to my editor now. I already have some codes ready here, so I will be just using them. But before we start, so this file is getting a little bit bigger and bigger, and then I keep linking to this file like from my YouTube videos. So I might actually move some of these files around, put them under a folder called archive soon. But here, let me create a new function called connect. So connect is actually will read our credentials from a file and then give us the information we need. So for this purpose, I already prepared a file. So under data, I have a file called login.json, which includes the actual email and the password of the player I just showed you. But then I created a file for you with login.json.sample, which shows you the structure. So essentially it is just your email and password. I mean, you might not prefer to do it this way, you can get your email and password from the terminal when you are running your Python code. It's up to you, but this is how I will show you. And then when you clone the repository, you can just rename this as login.json and then put your email and password if you feel comfortable. And in here, then I need to read this file, so I will say from pathlib import path. So I use path as a way to access relative folders and files, and also since this is a JSON file, I will also import that package. And now let's see, we are already importing requests, and also I will say from requests import session. So we don't need to do this part actually, so we can just because we will just log in once and then get the information we need, and then we will be done with it. But we need to keep that session open to access those pages I showed you that requires your that requires authentication essentially. So now under connect, just let me know if you have any questions so far, and I will say okay, let's call a base folder, and our base folder will be just path. So when I give it this way, base folder is actually wherever this file is living, and then I will say base folder, and then go one directory up, and then under data find login.json and open this as f. Now we will say credentials is equal to json.load f. Okay. So now credentials will have again email and password, and then here we will define a payload for the post request. So if you're not familiar, there are actually multiple types of HTTP requests, but two most common ones are GET and POST. So until now we have been using GET quite often, so you can remember we were just calling this main API entry point using GET request. So when you are making a GET request, you are not giving any data. So you are just requesting, you are fetching something. POST is used whenever you are submitting a form, for example. So you need to send a data to the server before you can get an answer. So that's why we will be using POST, but so whenever you are making a POST request, usually you also give some kind of data. In here, we are just going to give our email and password information. So I will say payload is, so as a password, it will be our credentials password, and then a login will be our credentials. I think it was email. And there are two more fields that you can actually learn from inspecting that that network request if you open your Chrome developer window. But I will just copy and paste them here because I already have them. So these are those. So the first one is redirect URI. So this is where it redirects you after you submit your request. And also the app has a name, and then you also need to pass that one. And whenever we pass these, actually before even defining the payload, let me create a session here. So remember, session is coming from request package, and now we are ready to make a post request. Here the URL that we were trying to submit our form is this one, users Premier.com account / login. And so as the second parameter, I will give the payload. So payload is just a Python dictionary, as you see. And whenever we send this, as as you see, I'm not returning anything from this. So even though it will probably return me the status code and also some other information, I don't need to know what it returns as long as this is successful. And so now I can try to get that page that I have been mentioning, API me, and say if our status code is equal to 200, meaning that the request is successful. Let me print the JSON info, like read the JSON and then convert it to a dictionary, Python dictionary, and then print it. So now I can go to my source folder and then, oh, okay. Let me try to call connect directly, not doing anything. Now, multi-period I, when I run it, as you see, I see my date of birth, not my, but this demo teams, and I see the email and I see the team ID. So if you have the credentials, as you see now, you don't need to give the team ID. So I will just grab this one and I will say team ID, and also I will put an else here, else raise value error, and I will say cannot read data, just in case if you don't give the correct credentials, we can maybe see a message over here. And if everything is fine, then we can return the entire thing. I will say return our JSON file. And also one thing we need to do is we also need to return the session itself, because we will be using session to read the players you have in your team, right? So we need to return the session itself, and then the whatever data we grabbed from here. I'm checking if there's anything else I need to do here. Okay, yeah, I think that was it. So the second URL we mentioned was for getting our team data, right? So I will say get my data, and then here we need to pass the session itself where we are logged in, and also the team ID. Team ID is required here because it's part of the URL, and what I will do is I will just connect first and then get team ID from here. Actually, I don't even need to return the entire thing here. You can remember, but yeah, see, it's also available here. So this dictionary, the first key we want is player, which returns another dictionary inside. And then here we want this entry. So I will say player and entry here. So this will be returning me the team ID. So I will say session, comma, team ID is equal to connect. Also checking if I need anything else here. Okay. So whenever then we are calling get my data, we can pass the session and then the team ID. So you probably know, but these variables are not supposed, like you can give different names. They're not. It could also work if I just call this something else. So here we will make a get request now. So this will be an F string so that we can pass. So this was the URL we were trying to access earlier, and team ID, as you see, will just be replaced using the F string here. And I will say r.json, which gives me the data. And then here, team ID is not part of this dictionary, and I need to access it later. So it's a good practice to add this team ID so that I don't need to carry the previous one later, and I will just return this data. And okay, let's review. So we are connecting and then getting the data. So I will say my data is equal to this, and then let's print it. And also, we don't need to print this anymore, so I will just remove this part and then print my data, clear this. Let's see if we will get our picks. Okay, so as you see, so this is a dictionary with, I think, a few keys. Just checking picks, chips, and transfers, and you can see over here. So picks is just a list of the players in your team, and then it's a list of from JSON. It's an object, but it's a dictionary for us. So this is just a list of dictionaries, and each dictionary has element ID, position. Position is just, what's the position of that player. Like if you sort the team from, goalkeeper to the forward, it goes from 1 to 15. And so for lineup players, it's not important, but it helps FPL to remember what was the, order of your players if you are sorting your players by their, colors. I know some people are just sorting their team so that it looks symmetric. And then as you see, we have the selling price over here. You need to divide this by 10. So this is just 5.6 for this player. Multiplier. So if it is a captain, it's 2. If not, it's 1. So it's not important for us because we are only interested in the current team and then the selling prices. And then the purchase price. So this is interesting because we will probably see a few players here. Let me see actually. Since I created this team like after season started, it's possible that I didn't see any price changes for any of these players, or maybe they only lost value. Selling price 77, 71. Yeah, can't see anything, but usually what happens if your purchase price is different than your selling price, we will see two different values here. Can't see, but anyway. So now that we know my data is including all the picks we have, we can give this and then prepare our data. So get data is already taking team ID, game week, seed value, horizon, and whether we are randomizing XP values or not. Like you might remember this from sensitivity analysis discussion from last episode. So this is getting a little bit chaotic. So I will just write another function called prep data, and then we will get rid of get data later. And then I will just copy all of these to here. I will call it prep data. And then prep data will only have two things. First of all, my team data and also the options I have. And options will be a dictionary where we have all the other parameters we were passing. What's the horizon, if I am randomizing or not, if I am running a sensitivity analysis or not. So those kind of stuff will be inside options. Will be inside options, and then this way we can also get a default value for those kind of options. So I will just paste it here, and then we will go over what's needed. But let me call this here. I will call prep data with my team data, and then options, and then options here will be a dictionary so this will be easier to control for us. So one cool thing you can do is you can save your options into a JSON file and then read it if you are using the same settings every time. So for example, if you are solving the problem for 4 game weeks with DK, a certain DK base, you can save it, read it from here, and then just solve it directly without changing the data. Or if you are developing a web interface, again, you can pass these options here, so we don't need to hard code anything. But saying this, we will hard code something here for now. I will put horizon as 3 and I will say randomize is equals to false. And then we have seed number, you can remember from the earlier episode. I will just comment this out because we won't need it. And then I will say use wildcard in game week 8. So it will take a while until we can use this value, but let's make sure that we are passing it so that we can have it when we need it. So now I'm calling prep data, which needs to return me the data dictionary itself, which will include everything. So it will include the data frame of all the players, their expected points, the team data and type data, all those stuff we were passing earlier. But in this case, since we are already sending the picks, so we don't need to do this part now because we were reading team ID. You might remember we were also getting the game week, so we don't need to do this anymore. And let me go back here. Okay, so the first thing we do is obviously we need to read the this entry point of FPL API, because this will bring me stuff like all the elements. And elements, by the way, in FPL API is just players, team players. So I need to get that list. And here, so the one thing we are missing is game week, because as you see it says game week is not defined. We can actually say game week is equal to 0 and then iterate over all the events and see which event is next. So I will say for E in FPL data events, I will say is next, then game week is equal to EID, and then you can break it. Let me show you very quickly where these magical fields are coming from. Share my, oops. Let me share my window here. Okay, so as you see, so this is the FPL API entry point. So this is the static data, and events is just a list with 38 items in it, and it's a list of dictionaries actually. And so each dictionary has lots of fields. As you see, ID, what's the name, what's the deadline. So you can even calculate exact, time left until deadline, and average entry score. So these are not that important, but as you see, so this is the field we are after. If it is next, then we can actually use this to identify what's the next game week. I'm not sure if is current also takes value true. Oh yeah, okay. Game week 5, like in this case, it just says is current true, but game week 6 will have is next equal true. And then, okay. For some reason, I don't know, I think this is a bug in their system, but FPL have been showing these chip plays, how many bench boost, free hit, wildcard, and triple captain used, even though game week 6 is not over yet. So we don't know if these values are correct or not. I think this is kind of a bug in their system. I don't know if they will ever fix it, but anyway. Now, going back here. Okay, so we know the game week now, the next game week, and then so we don't need team ID anymore. That's missing over here. So I will skip that one. We will get horizon, which is coming from options dictionary. So in this case, so you might be wondering, what happens if I don't give horizon and then if I try to access it. So in order to prevent these kind of mistakes, if you have any default value in mind, what you can do instead of doing this is using get method, and then you can say horizon, like get horizon key and its value, and then you can give a default value if user doesn't pass anything. So in this case, we can say default horizon is 3 or 4 or 8, whatever. And now, so this part is the same. We are reading all the elements and then all the team data. And so we are merging them. And then we are reading FPL review data. We are filling empty ones with 0. So, and also I'm assigning a review ID. So because FPL reviews data is always sorted by the FPL ID, and it was causing some issues when earlier we were trying to merge it with player names and team, because I think this year, for the first time that I have seen, we have 2 players with the same web name playing for the same team. So it was causing an issue. So a fix we implemented was adding review ID, just simply index +1, because FPL IDs are starting from 1. And then merge data is just a merging of this data frame with FPL reviews data on the ID itself. So now here, instead of randomized, which was a parameter before, I will again say options get randomized, and then the default value is false. So if you don't get randomized, it will take value false. If you say randomized equals to false, then again this we will skip this part. And then here you can do this options get seed. And you don't need to give this explicitly none, because if seed is equal to none, it's just a random seed number is getting assigned, which is what we want. But if get method doesn't have the second parameter, it always returns none, so you don't need to write it explicitly. And let's see here. Okay, so we are reading game. Okay, so the game weeks now, I had this fix of adding +1 from earlier episode. We forgot, and we were actually passing game week. We were calling this get data function inside here, where we were passing the last game week so that we can get the team picks. We don't need it anymore, so we can just say game weeks. Game weeks is just a list starting from next game week now, and then a plus horizon, which we are reading here. And then here, let me see, we are adding noise if we want, and then this part is not important now. And then type data. Okay, so we don't need next game week anymore. As I mentioned, we are reading type data and checking my notes. Okay, so this part we no longer need, because we are getting picks from the API already. And then here now, instead of read this from picks, this should come from my data picks. And R is equal to request. Okay, yeah, this part is also we don't need anymore. We need to else help price here, because for these players in this list, so this list is only carrying the player IDs, and then we need to also have a dictionary that includes the selling prices. Later we will also add, I think so there are 3 prices for every player. So the first one is current price, obviously, and then the second one is your purchase price, and then the third one is sell price. So we don't need to give buy price explicitly, because we already have sell price. So if you won't use credentials though, what you need to do is you need to figure out what was the buy price originally. Like if you are curious about your mini league rival, for example, and then try to calculate sell price based on that. Okay, in here I will say I element, which is the ID of every player. So this dictionary will have player IDs as the keys, and then I will say selling price for I in my data picks. And let's see, so we were reading in the bank amount before this way. Now we have my data, and then let's see if we can see it here. Yeah, as you see, transfers is just a key in this dictionary, transfers. And here I have this bank value, which you need to divide by 10. And then the free transfer is simply how many you have, like what's the limit, and how many you have made. So I can't remember what happens when you use your wildcard. It's possible that this limit doesn't show as 2, but it says unlimited. So then we can do this. We can try so I will just try to convert limit into or not the limit, but yes, limit into an integer. If it fails, I know that we are using our wildcard, or rather wildcard is activated, like currently active now. So I will say my data transfers limit, and if it's successful, I will just remove my data transfers made, and then if I get an exception, I will just say my free transfers equal to 15. I'm trying to think if assigning this to 15 will create any issues. I think it will create an issue when I try to connect to Johnson's wildcard and check if the limit value changes. Okay, before that, let me try this actually. Print ft here, and then here merge data, team data. By the way, there's a question for you people. So if I am on wildcards, or sorry, if I start a game week and then if I may make some transfers and if I take some hits, if I activate my wildcard after that, do I still lose those -4s because I took the hits before I activated the wildcard? That's something I'm not sure actually. Merge data, team data, my data. They are reading type data. Wildcard wipes out the transfer costs. Okay, it's good to know. Next game week is game week. We have our initial squad IDs. Sell price is equal to sell price, that we need to now pass this into the optimization. And in the bank, we already have in the bank amount, and then free transfer is now equal to FT. Okay, so let's do this and then print data, and let's see if we can see the free transfer to free transfer as 2 now. Okay, as you see, free transfer is 2 right now, and I will go back and we will experiment. First of all, I will try to transfer someone so that you can see that the free transfer is being updated. Let me share my window. Okay, for John Johnson, we need to transfer a player. If you have any suggestions, so here is the squad. It's not a team that I actively play anyway, so let's see. Probably a defender. Oh, lots of money here. Let's get Rudiger, and then after I say make transfers, confirm it. Now if I come here, if I refresh the page, you will see that made value is now 1, and then when I go back here, if I run this again, I should be able to see that. Yeah, as you see, now free transfer is equal to 1. So this is why it's cool to have your credentials, so that you can actually get the latest information without applying any tricks. And okay, it's the time for activating the wildcard. Well, let's go back and see what happens. Okay, let's see. We need to transfer someone to activate the wildcard, I'm guessing, because I don't see it here. Okay. Let's transfer. Oops. Or is it under transfers? Okay, play wildcard. I keep hitting my microphone, I'm sorry about this. You must be making enough proposed transfer that points will be deducted. Okay. Let's sell someone here. 0.1. That's like 1 like. And then wait. Oh, okay. So we need to be okay. We need to transfer someone else to let's remove someone here. Let's get gray. Can I play it now? You are now proposing to play your wildcard. Unlimited transfers can be made this game week without points deduction for your transfers. Okay, and then make transfers. Here we go. Okay, let's refresh this and see what's happening. Oh, okay. So see, it also shows us that the wildcard is active, so we can actually search for this later. Let me zoom in a little bit. So as you see under chips, the first chip is wildcard, name wildcard, and played by entry is showing me game week 6, and then status for entry is active, and then others came unavailable. They were available earlier, but now I can't activate 2 chips at the same time. And limit is always 2. That's interesting. I think it just, and the cost is 4, even though cost is no longer 4 for my team because of the wildcard. Okay. So then perhaps instead of writing try catch, we need to have we need to be reading this like if wildcard chip status for entry is active. So let's go back then. And let me take a note here. We don't need to do this, but I will just write a note here. If wildcard is active, and you have okay, I will write an if condition here so that we can update our free transfer here if my data chips. Wildcard is at the 0 position, so it's the first item in that list. It's probably a better idea to just have a for loop instead, because the order might change. So I will say for C in my data chips, if C name is equal to wildcard, and for entry active, then let's make my free transfer 15. Oh, we also need to break this. Well, just in case. As you see, free transfer is equal to 15 now, so we will it will work fine. So when we go back to our model, when we are implementing everything, so you might remember that free transfer we implemented free transfer as an integer variable where the lower bound is 1 and upper bound is 2. So when we give free transfer, like the current free transfer as 15, so we will see that CBC will complain it's infeasible. So for this purpose, then we need to update our upper bound with 15, also lower bound with 0. If you have already used your like 2 free transfers, you don't have anything available. Oh, that reminded me that here, then if this value so I will just, because the transfer made could be, you could also get penalized transfer to 0 if you don't want to change the bounds. Yeah, so I will say if ft is less than 0, it's 0. And then when we are updating the model, I will actually put a note here so that we can remember free transfers here will be 0 and 15. And then we will not add a constraint for future transfers to be between 1 and 2. So I'm adding this note because the free transfer constraints, they will change completely when we are adding wildcard. So I won't be I won't be doing those changes today because I don't have too much time left anyway. But we will come back here. But as you see now, we activated the wildcard, and then the free transfer is equal to 15 now, so we are good. So we know that like we can transfer 15 up to 15 players without getting penalized, which makes sense. I'm checking my notes, but I think I will stop here. Yeah, this is a good place to stop, so I can also talk a little bit about what I'm planning this game week with you. So I was actually thinking on using wildcard on game week 8. I'm still not sure if, it will work. Actually, I can actually explore. Well, even now I can actually give it a try. Like what happens if I use my wildcard game week 7? I don't need to force Lukaku then. And also maybe solve for this 3 game week so that we have a wildcard in between. Okay. Let's see if this will work. Okay, so this Bamford Antonio this game week, actually it's just easier to see it here. Bamford Antonio, and then okay, yeah, it gets Lukaku and keeps Jimenez. Okay. Has a vice captain too. I know people are very suspicious about this entire thing because Jimenez's expected points were high, but he didn't deliver also last game week. We will see what will happen. So the only players that stays the same is Jimenez, Salah, Rafinha, Shaw. Oh, also my bench goalkeeper Begovic, which is ahead in terms of XP, ahead of Sanchez. I wasn't really expecting him to ever play, but yeah, lots to think about. And let me go back to my webcam. Might change with longer horizon. Yeah, it will certainly change. If I can decide on when to use my wildcard, I will just extend the horizon as much as possible to see what I should be doing, because obviously when you look at only 2 game weeks, it just favors players with that has only 2 game weeks, the good fixtures. But anyway, so thank you for listening to me today. So we made some structural changes to our model before we start implementing the wildcard idea. And so we will, in the next episode, we will talk about what kind of variables we need to make this happen. And then what kind of constraints we will need. We will remove some of the constraints and then rewrite them because of the wildcard. And hopefully, I'm hoping to finish this before game week 7 or 8 at least, so that you can benefit from it if you haven't used your wildcard. But you can also use the same idea for the second wildcard too. With this, I thank you for listening to me. Hopefully next time we will talk about other parts of the wildcard optimization, and I wish you a great day and see you next time.